The baccarat crystal bowl sitting on my lap was obnoxiously cold, completely out of sync with the suffocating humidity of a New York summer night. A loud crunch echoed as I stuffed another handful of sour cream and onion potato chips into my mouth, not bothering to wipe the grease from my fingertips. On the 90-inch OLED screen spanning half the living room wall, a chaotic 90s American soap opera was reaching its climax. The male lead was currently kneeling in the rain, screaming into the void about a betrayal that had less logical foundation than a pyramid scheme. God, his emotional intelligence is depreciating faster than a penny stock in a bear market, I muttered, my voice muffled by the chips. Who wrote this script? A hyperactive seagull. Despite my scathing critique, the sheer, unrelenting cringe of the scene finally did its job. My merman instincts, hardwired for over-empathy, kicked in. A familiar, irritating prickle started at the corners of my eyes. The ambient lighting in the sprawling Upper East Side penthouse, initially a sterile, wealthy white, instinctively shifted. A faint, luminescent cerulean mist began to bleed into the air around me, thick with the scent of a stormy Atlantic. A crisp, resonant clink rang out. The first tear fell, solidifying mid-air into a perfectly spherical, flawless white pearl. It struck the bottom of the baccarat bowl. More distinct clinking sounds followed in quick succession. I sighed, lazily wiping a stray tear that threatened to slide down my cheek, turning it into another sphere of pure wealth before it could hit the imported Italian leather sofa. This was my life now. Fresh out of a toxic, 3-year contract/relationship with Chadwick, a man whose ego was as inflated and fragile as a tech bubble, I found myself in the absurd position of needing startup capital, fast. To my left, a heavy, deeply reassuring amber aura began to swallow the blue mist. Harrison Sterling, the undisputed apex predator of Wall Street and, ironically, Chadwick's terrifyingly powerful uncle, sat in an armchair that cost more than my first coral reef. He wasn't watching the screen. His profound, predatory gaze was entirely fixed on me, or rather, on the bowl of pearls resting on my legs. Are you sure this is a sustainable business model? Finnick. Harrison's voice was a low, magnetic rumble that vibrated pleasantly against my skin, completely grounding the chaotic energy of my rutting instincts. Do not disrupt the production line, Harrison. I snapped back, though there was zero venom in it. I shifted my weight, letting my colossal silver tail, which currently draped over the edge of the sofa and pooled onto the floor like a waterfall of liquid moonlight, thump rhythmically against the Persian rug. I calculated the current exchange rate, given the rarity of deep-sea merman pearls, assuming a conservative market valuation and adjusting for inflation. 15 more of these should give me enough liquid capital to mask my IP through 7 different proxy servers in Eastern Europe. Harrison's lips quirked upwards into a smile that would have terrified his board of directors. He simply adjusted his position, the dark gold tension around him softening into a ridiculous, fawning warmth. He reached over, offering me a velvet napkin to wipe my greasy fingers. The man who could bankrupt a small nation before his morning coffee was currently acting as my personal pearl catcher and sanitation officer. Whatever you need, my little fish. I rolled my eyes, grabbing the napkin. Don't little fish me. I am currently a highly aggressive hedge fund algorithm masquerading as a marine biologist. I tossed the bowl of pearls onto the coffee table and dragged my custom-built, liquid-cooled laptop onto my chest. The screen illuminated my face in a stark, icy blue light. Lines of code scrolled down the terminal, a high-frequency trading bot I had meticulously programmed over the last 48 hours. Its singular, glorious purpose to execute a massive short squeeze on Chadwick's heavily leveraged tech company. I cracked my knuckles. The sharp sound cut through the background noise of the soap opera's dramatic strings. His firewall, I observed, my fingers flying over the mechanical keyboard in a blur of precision, is as structurally sound as a slice of Swiss cheese left in the sun. He actually used his own birthday as the primary decryption key. It's almost insulting. I paused, letting my finger hover over the enter key. Down on the floor, unnoticed in the shadows, a few pearls that had missed the bowl rolled away. They carried a faint, residual hum of my deeply buried resentment, slipping quietly through the floor grates and into the labyrinthine plumbing of New York, echoing down towards the Hudson River. I didn't care. I hit enter. A soft ping signaled the terminal flashing green. The bot was live. Billions of microtransactions began to flood the market, a silent, invisible tsunami aimed straight at Chadwick's arrogant empire. I slammed the laptop shut, letting out a massive, bone-deep yawn. The sheer effort of crying and coding had completely drained my non-existent stamina. I curled up, pulling my silver tail closer to my chest, letting the cool scale soothe my flushed skin. "I'm going to sleep," I announced to the room at large. "Wake me up when his stock hits penny status." Miles away in a gaudy, minimalist apartment, a massive, foul-tempered king crab dragged itself out of a solid gold toilet bowl. Its oversized, serrated claw snapped with the force of a hydraulic press, cleanly bisecting a vibrating iPhone 16 Pro Max that was desperately trying to display a flurry of margin call alerts. Oblivious to the aquatic revolution I had just sparked, I closed my eyes, letting Harrison's warm, amber aura completely envelop me in the dark. It was finally a good night. The ambient lighting in the master bathroom was meticulously set to abyssal twilight. The water in the custom sunken tub glowed with a faint, bioluminescent cyan, perfectly matching the natural frequency of my silver scales. I had a premium kelp mask plastered to my face, and a waterproof iPad Pro floated gracefully on a bamboo tray right in front of me. On the screen, a magnificent, catastrophic waterfall of red candlestick charts was cascading downwards. My high-frequency trading bot had been running for 12 hours, and it was currently treating Chadwick's tech portfolio with the same amount of mercy a blender treats a tomato. "Fascinating," I mumbled, adjusting a peeling piece of kelp under my left eye. "His liquidity is evaporating faster than puddle water in the Sahara." I expected his automated defense protocols to kick in around the 15% drop mark, but this is just humiliating. The sheer incompetence of Chadwick's firewall offended me on a deeply personal level. I tapped the screen, bringing up the backend code of his corporate servers. "Look at this spaghetti code," I scoffed to the empty room. "His encryption protocols are so violently outdated they belong in a museum next to the floppy disks. I'm pretty sure his master password is still Chadwick Rules 123. His IQ is depreciating significantly faster than this trading chart, honestly. It's a medical miracle he hasn't forgotten how to consciously inhale oxygen." I swiped left on the iPad, switching from the Bloomberg terminal to a live, high-definition feed of Chadwick's internal penthouse security cameras. I had hijacked them around 2 a.m. while looking for a late-night snack. What played out on the screen was a breathtaking masterpiece of silent, aquatic espionage. The rhythmic sounds of snipping and snapping echoed silently through the footage. Even without audio, I could practically hear the symphony of destruction. Under the cover of darkness, a highly organized strike force of king crabs and American lobsters, summoned apparently by the heavily cursed pearls I had flushed down the drain last night, were executing a tactical, zero-mercy raid on his apartment. I watched, utterly mesmerized, as a particularly hefty lobster systematically snipped the fiber-optic internet cables with the cold precision of a seasoned bomb squad technician. Meanwhile, in the walk-in closet, 3 massive king crabs were engaging in a ruthless turf war with Chadwick's prized wardrobe. His bespoke Tom Ford silk shirts and $5,000 Armani suits were being methodically shredded into pathetic, asymmetrical hula skirts. "Good boys," I purred, feeling an unexpected surge of profound paternal pride. "Aim for the cashmere next." The heavy oak door to the bathroom opened with a soft click. Instantly, the cool, tranquil cyan ambience of the room was aggressively invaded by a thick, suffocatingly rich aura of dark gold. Harrison stepped in, wearing a meticulously tailored 3-piece suit that screamed absolute predatory authority. The mere presence of this man usually made global stock indexes tremble. Yet, the moment his profound, hawk-like eyes landed on me, slouching in a tub, covered in green slime, surrounded by floating rubber ducks, the tyrannical edge of his aura melted entirely. It shifted into a warm, heavy, incredibly protective amber glow. "You've been in there for 3 hours, Finn," Harrison noted, his baritone voice a low rumble that sent pleasant, warm vibrations rippling through the bathwater. He walked over it, his handmade Italian leather shoes stepping carelessly into the splash zone, and leaned over my shoulder to peer at the floating iPad. His sharp gaze shifted rapidly from the apocalyptic red charts of his nephew's collapsing company to the live feed of the crustacean demolition derby. I braced myself slightly. Most rational men would be intimidated, perhaps even horrified, to discover their supposedly fragile merman partner was currently orchestrating a multi-million-dollar financial, terrorist attack and a targeted biological home invasion simultaneously. Instead, Harrison's dark gold aura flared. It practically boiled over with an intense, intoxicating wave of sheer fascination. The air grew dense with his unapologetic, unhinged infatuation. "You didn't just short his stock," Harrison murmured, his breath ghosting hot against my damp ear. "You triggered a localized liquidity crisis." You're completely suffocating his supply chain. He's overleveraged, I replied lazily, sinking a little deeper into the warm water until the bubbles tickled my chin. His debt-to-equity ratio was a ticking time bomb. I just sped up the clock. Consider it a philanthropic act of market efficiency. Harrison let out a low, dark chuckle that vibrated straight through my spine. He reached out his large, calloused hand, gently wiping a stray drop of water from my jawline. Everyone in my social circle thinks I took in a delicate, heartbroken little fish who reeks of the sea, he whispered, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous, terrifyingly possessive pride. Turns, I'm harboring the great white shark of Wall Street. Don't insult me. Sharks are overly dramatic and have a terrible return on investment, I retorted, swatting his hand away lazily before leaning my head back against the edge of the tub. I am a ruthless, cold-blooded couch potato. Now, pass me that sparkling water. My throat is dry from silently judging his life choices. Harrison obediently popped the cap off a bottle of San Pellegrino, his amber aura wrapping around me like a weighted blanket. As I took a sip, the iPad suddenly chimed with a high priority, blaring red alert. Chadwick's IP address was rapidly masking itself, aggressively rerouting through high-grade military VPNs. The catastrophic waterfall of red candlestick charts briefly paused its freefall. I raised a silver eyebrow, a spark of genuine amusement finally igniting in my chest. Oh, the idiot finally woke up and threw daddy's money at his problem. He's hired a private cybersecurity firm to trace my algorithm. The gentle hum of the bathroom fan was the only sound for a long moment. Then I smiled a slow, terrifying curve of my pale lips that made Harrison's breath hitch. Cute, I whispered. I tapped the screen, instantly opening a fresh, pitch-black command terminal. Let's see if these highly paid renegade geeks can handle a self-replicating polymorphic worm. I yawned, stretching my silver tail until the massive, translucent fins broke the surface of the water with a heavy splash. The game was finally getting mildly interesting, but honestly, I was already thinking about what I wanted for lunch. The absolute best thing about deep-sea decapod crustaceans is their thermodynamics. I was currently curled up in the center of a sprawling, custom-built California king bed, draped in a 1,000-thread count Egyptian cotton sheet, tucked intimately against my chest, right where a teddy bear, or perhaps a highly influential billionaire partner should be, was a 40-pound Alaskan king crab. I had named him Barnaby. Barnaby's spiky, armored exoskeleton was maintaining a glorious, constant surface temperature of exactly 45 degrees Fahrenheit. For a merman suffering from post-rut metabolic dehydration, pressing my flushed cheek against his freezing carapace was a spiritual experience. An obnoxiously shrill, high-frequency alarm began to beep rapidly from my laptop on the nightstand, violently shattering my tranquil, sub-zero sanctuary. I groaned, burying my face deeper into Barnaby's shell. Ignore it, Barnaby. I mumbled into the dark. It's just the sound of desperate, minimum wage tech support. But the beeping escalated into a frantic siren. The ambient smart lighting of the bedroom automatically shifted from a soothing twilight violet to a pulsing, urgent yellow. I reluctantly cracked one eye open. Chadwick's newly hired cybersecurity firm was finally launching a counter-offensive. With a heavy sigh, I disentangled myself from Barnaby, who responded with an affectionate, metallic clatter of his right claw, and dragged the laptop onto the mattress. The screen was a chaotic battlefield of executing scripts. The renegade geeks were attempting a synchronized, multi-node reverse trace on my proxy servers. Oh, look at them trying to establish a secure perimeter, I sneered, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, instinctively finding their rhythm. They're using a standard AES 256 encryption protocol to block my Trojan. How painfully orthodox. It's like trying to stop a bullet train with a wet floor sign. I didn't even need to sit up. Lying on my side, I began typing with one hand. I executed a localized buffer overflow, bypassing their primary firewall in exactly 14 seconds. You want to play hide and seek, I whispered to the glowing screen, a sharp, vindictive smirk pulling at my pale lips. Let's play. Instead of just maintaining the short squeeze on Chadwick's main stock, I rerouted my algorithm to infiltrate his hidden offshore accounts. The man was a walking cliché. Of course, he had a slush fund in the Cayman Islands. It took me another 2 minutes of lazy typing to crack the password, which was, horrifyingly, Chadwick CEO_alpha. The terminal flashed the words transferring funds. $3.2 million, I calculated aloud, watching the digital numbers drain from his account like water from a punctured bathtub. I think the Global SEAL Rescue Foundation is about to receive an anonymous, highly generous cryptographic donation. Those chubby little ice sausages will be eating premium salmon all winter. Just as I hit the final execute command, the heavy mahogany door to the bedroom swung open. Instantly, the temperature in the room seemed to spike. The air grew oppressively heavy. Harrison stepped over the threshold, still dressed in his impeccably tailored trousers and a partially unbuttoned dress shirt. Usually, his presence flooded the room with a warm, protective amber aura that made my silver scales hum with contentment. Tonight, however, that golden halo had curdled into a murky, suffocatingly dark cloud of pure, unadulterated sulking. It was a localized low-pressure weather system of billionaire jealousy. Harrison's predatory, hawk-like gaze bypassed the laptop, completely ignoring the fact that I had just illegally redistributed millions of dollars. His eyes locked dead onto the giant king crab resting comfortably on my pillow. Barnaby, sensing the aggressive shift in the room's apex hierarchy, slowly raised his left pincer in a defensive, clicking salute. "Finnick," Harrison began, his baritone voice dangerously calm and laced with a terrifyingly dark tension. "Why is there life? Oversized decapod crustacean in our bed?" "Because he is a thermodynamic marvel," I replied smoothly, closing my laptop and tossing it aside. I pulled the duvet back up, ensuring Barnaby's legs were properly covered. His structural integrity provides excellent lumbar support, and his shell is exactly the temperature of the Mariana Trench. He is the ultimate biological cooling pack. Harrison pinched the bridge of his nose. The dark, stormy aura around him pulsed violently. "It is a bottom-feeding scavenger fin. It is a walking health code violation. It belongs in a boiling pot with melted butter and garlic, not on my imported silk pillows. Don't you dare threaten him. His biological structure and overall hygiene are statistically more reliable than the moral compass of 90% of your board of directors." I shot back, my snarky mouth operating at peak efficiency. I glared at Harrison, my ice blue aura flaring up to clash against his oppressive dark gold one. "Besides, you radiate heat like a faulty nuclear reactor, Harrison. If I cuddle with you right now, I will literally dehydrate and turn into a giant silver piece of beef jerky. You are a biological hazard to my hydration levels." Harrison stared at me, his jaw clenching so hard I thought his teeth might shatter. For a man who regularly intimidated global prime ministers, being intellectually and emotionally bested by a piece of seafood was clearly a new, deeply agonizing experience. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a gravelly, magnetic whisper that sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. "I will buy you a cooling blanket. I will buy you a custom-built cryogenic chamber. I will literally buy you a glacier in Iceland. Barnaby is free, eco-friendly, and he doesn't try to grope my tail when I'm sleeping," I retorted lazily, yawning and turning my back to Harrison, spooning the crab once more. "If you're too hot, the vintage leather couch in your study has excellent ventilation. Good night, Harrison." For a long, agonizing minute, the only sound in the room was the soft, rhythmic clatter of Barnaby's mandibles. Finally, I heard a heavy, defeated sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the entire stock exchange. The oppressive, jealous heat slowly retreated from the room. "I am going to have my R&D department invent a $500,000 thermal regulated mattress by tomorrow morning," Harrison muttered darkly to himself, the sound of his Italian leather shoes retreating into the hallway. "I am not losing my spot in bed to a damn crab." The door shut softly behind him. I smiled against Barnaby's freezing shell. The cyber war was won, the SEALs were funded, and my billionaire was currently out researching mattress technology. All in all, a highly productive Tuesday night. The sheer acoustic perfection of Harrison's penthouse was usually a blessing. Today, however, it meant that the violent, hydraulic hiss of the private elevator doors being forcefully pried open echoed like a gunshot. I didn't immediately open my eyes. I was currently submerged up to my waist in a custom-built, open-top saltwater tank that Harrison had seamlessly integrated into the center of the living room floor. I was busy recalibrating the pH levels of the water with my innate merman biology while simultaneously ignoring the impending collapse of the global tech sector. Heavy, aggressive combat boots thudded against the Italian marble. "Harrison, where is he?" The voice was ragged, desperate, and gratingly familiar. I let out a slow, exhausted sigh, bubbles rising to the surface of the tranquil blue water. Opening one eye, I looked through the crystal clear glass of the tank. Chadwick had arrived. He looked absolutely atrocious. His previously arrogant, dark red aura had completely decayed into a nauseating, panicky crimson fog that clung to him like cheap cologne. He was flanked by 3 massive, heavily armed private security contractors dressed in tactical black gear, clearly. After his cybersecurity team had spectacularly failed to block my algorithms, he had decided to resort to primitive, physical intimidation. Harrison, who had been sitting at the mahogany bar reviewing quarterly reports, slowly set down his crystal glass of scotch. Instantly, the ambient light in the room seemed to dim. A terrifying, oppressive dark gold halo erupted from his towering frame, spreading across the room like a localized gravitational anomaly. You have exactly 3 seconds to explain why you are dirtying my floors, Chadwick. Harrison's voice was dangerously soft, a lethal vibration that made the water in my tank ripple. You took him, Chadwick screamed, pointing a trembling finger in my direction. He completely ignored his uncle's lethal warning. His rationality clearly evaporated along with his net worth. He took a step toward my tank, pulling something from his pocket. It was a pathetic, cheaply made replica of the shell necklace I used to wear. Finnick, I know you're just throwing a tantrum. I brought your necklace back. The bet is over. Shut down the bots, and I'll forgive you for this little rebellious phase. I slowly rose from the water, my silver hair plastered to my neck, water cascading down my heavily scaled chest. I rested my elbows lazily on the edge of the glass, resting my chin on my hands. Forgive me, I tilted my head, letting a pure, indestructible ice blue aura flare around me, cleanly repelling Chadwick's foul crimson fog. Chadwick, your emotional manipulation tactics are as horribly outdated as a dial-up modem. And for the record, your cognitive depth and overall capacity for rational thought are statistically comparable to a sea urchin, though that is a massive insult to the evolutionary marvel of echinoderms. Don't overact. Your thinking is as shallow and smooth as an oyster shell beaten by the Atlantic for 300 years. Chadwick's face went completely, terrifyingly blank. The public humiliation, the financial ruin, and the sheer apathy in my voice finally snapped the last thread of his sanity. Grab the freak, he hissed, his eyes bloodshot, turning to his security detail. Stun him if you have to. Drag him out of the water. The 3 muscle-bound contractors stepped forward in unison. The sharp, electric crackle of a high-voltage stun baton ignited the air. Harrison's dark gold aura violently spiked. He lunged forward to intervene, but he didn't need to. Before the lead contractor could even bring his stun baton within 3 feet of the glass, a blinding blur of neon green-blue and red shot out from the intricate coral reef structure at the bottom of my tank. It was Tyson. Tyson was a 10-inch peacock mantis shrimp that I had been secretly feeding premium scallops for the past 2 weeks. And Tyson was deeply, fiercely territorial. The physics of a mantis shrimp strike are a thermodynamic miracle. Tyson's club-like appendage uncoiled. A supersonic crack resounded, resembling a small caliber gunshot. Tyson's punch accelerated through the water at over 50 miles per hour. The strike was so blindingly fast that it actually boiled the water around it, creating a localized cavitation bubble. As the bubble collapsed, it released a microscopic flash of light and a shockwave of immense pressure. The shockwave blasted through the surface of the water, striking the lead contractor squarely in the face with a tremendous impact. His tactical sunglasses shattered into 1,000 pieces. The 250-pound man let out a pathetic squeak, his eyes rolling to the back of his head, and collapsed onto the marble floor like a sack of wet cement. Before the other 2 guards could even process the fact that their commanding officer had just been physically bested by a crustacean, Tyson struck again. Another sharp crack echoed. The second guard dropped his stun baton, clutching his violently bruised knee with a howl of agony. The third guard simply stared at the brightly colored, 10-inch shrimp currently floating aggressively at the surface of the water, its clubs raised like a miniature aquatic boxer. He wisely put his hands in the air and backed away. Good boy, Tyson, I murmured, dropping a piece of freeze-dried shrimp into the water. Excellent application of fluid dynamics. The chaotic background noise of the heavy thuds was instantly suffocated by Harrison. He didn't say a word. He simply unleashed the full, unadulterated weight of his apex predator aura. The dark gold pressure hit Chadwick like a physical concrete wall. Chadwick gasped, his knees buckling under the sheer, terrifying authority of the man who controlled half the city. He crashed to his knees, choking on oxygen, his decaying red aura completely pulverized. Get out, Harrison commanded, his voice a low, terrifying decree from the absolute top of the food chain. Before I have you arrested for corporate espionage and trespassing. If you ever come within a mile of him again, I will personally ensure your existence is scrubbed from the financial registries. I squinted, raising a damp hand to shield my eyes. Harrison, turn down your aura's brightness. It's blinding, and I haven't put my UV-blocking sunglasses on yet. Harrison's rigid, terrifying posture completely broke. The tyrannical storm around him instantly melted into a warm, utterly helpless amber glow. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Chadwick didn't wait for a second invitation. Sobbing hysterically, stripped of his dignity, his money, and his security team, he scrambled backward on his hands and knees, fleeing toward the elevator like a rat escaping a sinking ship. I sank back down into the comfortable, temperature-regulated water. Hey Harrison, I called out lazily, watching the elevator doors slide shut. Can we order sushi? Actually no. Tyson here is a highly decorated combat veteran now. We're having premium A5 Wagyu tonight. The grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria was a masterclass in aggressive, suffocating opulence. Crystal chandeliers the size of small sedans hung from the vaulted ceilings, casting a brilliant, unforgiving light on 300 of the most ruthlessly wealthy individuals on the eastern seaboard. The air hummed with the clinking of champagne flutes, the rustle of designer silk in the low, predatory murmurs of venture capitalists sniffing out fresh blood. I, however, was currently utilizing 90% of my brain power to calculate exactly how fast I could theoretically swim back to the penthouse if I threw myself out the third-floor window and into the East River. Stand straight, Finn, Harrison murmured, his large, calloused hand resting securely on the small of my back. He looked like a dark god of commerce in a bespoke, midnight blue tuxedo. The ambient light seemed to physically bend around him, his dark gold aura throbbing with an intoxicating, territorial weight that effortlessly parted the crowd of billionaires like the Red Sea. I, on the other hand, was draped in a breathtaking, ice-white Tom Ford silk suit that Harrison had practically bribed me with premium caviar to wear. Despite looking like an ethereal piece of modern art, my posture was a disaster. I leaned heavily against Harrison's side, my internal salty fish energy violently rejecting the high-stakes corporate environment. My feet hurt, I complained quietly, suppressing a yawn behind a champagne flute. These Italian leather Oxfords are a crime against my arch support. They feel like a pair of geometrically incorrect clamshells. Endure it for 20 more minutes. Harrison chuckled low in his chest, the vibration warming my spine. His eyes, however, were fixed sharply on the main stage. The entertainment is about to begin. On the raised podium, bathed in the harsh glare of the spotlight, stood Chadwick. He was trying his absolute best to project the image of a fearless, visionary CEO. But to my eyes, his aura was a catastrophic, decaying red fog, leaking panic like a punctured oil tanker. He was sweating profusely, his hands gripping the edges of the podium so hard his knuckles were stark white. This annual financial summit was his absolute last lifeline, a desperate pitch to secure enough venture capital to save his heavily shorted company from complete annihilation. Ladies and gentlemen, Chadwick began, his voice amplified by the state-of-the-art acoustic system, though it carried a slight, pathetic tremor. Today, I present to you the future of decentralized data processing. Despite recent market anomalies, our Q3 projections are robust. Behind him, a massive, 70-foot LED screen flickered to life. A beautifully rendered, completely fabricated bar graph shot upwards in a glorious, optimistic curve. Fascinating, I whispered, resting my chin lazily on Harrison's shoulder. A textbook example of creative accounting. His financial models are built on assumptions so fundamentally flawed. They have less structural integrity than a sandcastle during a Category 5 hurricane. It's practically a Ponzi scheme wrapped in tech jargon. I didn't even bother bringing my laptop tonight. That would be too much effort. Instead, I slowly raised my left wrist, exposing a heavily customized, matte black smartwatch hidden beneath my silk cuff. With the tip of my index finger, I tapped a single, pre-programmed widget on the tiny screen. Execute protocol, deep sea ruin. On stage, Chadwick clicked his remote to transition to the next slide. As you can see from our liquidity ratios, the massive LED screen violently glitched with a loud buzz. The pristine, optimistic graphs instantly dissolved into a chaotic static of black and green pixels. A loud, sharp burst of electronic feedback shrieked through the ballroom's speakers, silencing the crowd of billionaires instantly. Chadwick froze, furiously clicking his remote. Technical difficulties, apologies. The screen didn't go blank. Instead, it transitioned to crystal clear, 4K night vision footage. It was the live feed I had ripped from Chadwick's own internal penthouse security cameras. The audio kicked in perfectly. The grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria was suddenly filled with the echoing, pathetic sound of loud, hysterical sobbing. On the 70-foot screen, Chadwick was captured kneeling on the floor of his ruined walk-in closet. He was surrounded by the shredded, asymmetrical remains of his entire wardrobe. But the absolute highlight, the element that made me want to frame this moment in the Louvre, was his current attire. He was wearing a pair of violently yellow, tragically torn SpongeBob SquarePants boxer shorts. A particularly large rip exposed his left thigh as he furiously pounded his fists against the marble floor, bawling like a toddler denied a toy. A heavy absolute and deeply uncomfortable dead silence fell over the 300 financial titans in the room. Then, someone in the back snorted. It was followed by a sharp, poorly concealed laugh. Within seconds, the room erupted. The quiet murmurs of the elite instantly transformed into a chaotic cacophony of sneers, gasps, and ruthless mockery. The staccato burst of press cameras ignited like a strobe light show, capturing Chadwick's pale, horrified face on stage juxtaposed against his sobbing, SpongeBob-clad self on the massive screen behind him. But the visual assassination wasn't the only operation in play. Down on the floor, hidden beneath the sweeping, floor-length tablecloths of the VIP seating area, a subtle, highly organized biological warfare was occurring. Soft snapping and clicking sounds emanated from the shadows. Several Wall Street tycoons suddenly shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A prominent hedge fund manager let out an undignified yelp, violently kicking his leg out as a heavily armored king crab executed a flawless, tactical pinch on his exposed ankle before scuttling back into the shadows. The crustacean legion had successfully infiltrated the venue. On stage, Chadwick completely unraveled. His decaying red aura was pulverized into nothingness. Stripped of his dignity, his lies, and any remaining shred of investor confidence, his knees buckled. He collapsed right there on the podium, dropping the remote, his eyes vacant and wide with absolute, world-ending despair. "Well," I said softly, the pure, impenetrable ice-blue halo around me glowing with an absolute, terrifying tranquility amidst the chaos. "That concludes my market correction. His stock valuation will officially hit zero before the appetizers are served." Harrison let out a low, incredibly dark laugh. His arm wrapped tightly around my waist, pulling me completely into his protective, heavily dominant amber space. "You are an absolute menace to the global economy," Harrison murmured, pressing a hot, reverent kiss to my temple, entirely ignoring the flashing cameras and the crumbling empire on stage. I have never been more attracted to anyone in my entire life. The ballroom was a war zone of flashing cameras, echoing laughter, and the complete, unmitigated collapse of a corporate empire. Security guards were already surging through the crowd, trying to clear the press away from the podium where Chadwick lay crumpled like a discarded piece of trash. But Chadwick wasn't finished, or wrapped. His shattered ego refused to accept the finality of his absolute annihilation. Driven by a sudden, manic surge of adrenaline, he scrambled up from the floor. His previously arrogant aura was now a highly toxic, rotting gray fog of pure desperation. He shoved past a bewildered hedge fund manager, his bloodshot eyes locking onto the serene, ice-blue halo radiating from my corner of the room. "Finnick," he shrieked, his voice cracking, tearing through the ambient noise of the ballroom like a rusted saw blade. He lunged forward, completely abandoning any remaining shred of dignity. He threw himself onto his knees, his hands reaching out to grab the impeccably tailored hem of my Tom Ford suit, intending to execute the classic, pathetic maneuver of begging for mercy. I casually took a step forward. Before his filthy, panic sweat-soaked fingers could even come within a yard of my silk trousers, I simply shifted my weight. I elegantly brought the toe of my diamond-encrusted, custom-made Oxford shoe down, pressing it firmly and uncompromisingly against the polished marble floor directly in the path of his reaching hands. It was a physical, absolute barrier. "I strongly advise against making physical contact, Chadwick," I said, my voice carrying the temperature of liquid nitrogen. The indestructible ice-blue aura around me flared, easily repelling the foul, desperate fog clinging to him. "This suit cost more than your company's currently projected market capitalization." Chadwick stared up at me from the floor, his chest heaving violently, tears pathetic, worthless human tears, streaked through the sweat on his face. "Finn, please. Shut it down," he sobbed, his voice raw and broken. "I know I messed up, but we had 3 years. You loved me. You can't just throw away 3 years of history. I'll marry you. I'll do whatever you want." A profound, suffocating silence fell over the immediate vicinity. Even the ruthless venture capitalists paused their whispering to watch the absolute train wreck unfolding before them. Harrison's dark gold aura violently spiked. The ambient temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. His hand tightened possessively on my waist, and I could feel the sheer, predatory intent radiating from his muscles. He was preparing to signal his security detail to physically dismantle his nephew. I gently placed my hand over Harrison's, silently telling him to stand down. I looked down at the pathetic, sobbing mess on the floor. My silver eyes didn't hold a single ounce of pity, anger, or even mild amusement. There was only the absolute, terrifying calmness of a fully audited spreadsheet. 3 years, I repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the freezing air. Chad, let me explain this in terms your severely depreciated intellect might comprehend. I leaned down slightly, my gaze acting like a scalpel, surgically dissecting his remaining delusions. Those 3 years. They are a textbook example of bad debt on my personal balance sheet. A heavily toxic asset class that I foolishly held onto despite massive, systemic red flags. You were an overvalued IPO built entirely on fraudulent emotional marketing. Chadwick's jaw fell open. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. And here is the fundamental rule of high-yield finance. I continued, my voice merciless and flat. When an asset is fundamentally compromised, you don't double down. You write it off. You liquidate. And you permanently delete it from the ledger. Our history has already been heavily written down to zero. Do not expect a return on an investment that has already been legally bankrupted. I straightened my posture, the icy halo around me completely freezing him out. Step back, Chadwick, I commanded, waving a hand lazily in front of my face. The sheer density of your hypocrisy is polluting the localized oxygen supply. It's making me nauseous. The words hit him harder than Tyson's hydraulic punch. The absolute finality in my voice, the complete lack of emotional attachment, pulverized the last remaining atoms of his grit. Decaying aura. He slumped forward, his hands dropping limply to his sides, completely hollowed out. I turned away, instantly dropping the terrifying, cold-blooded Wall Street persona. I looked up at Harrison, tugging lightly on the lapel of his midnight blue tuxedo. Harrison, my blood sugar is dropping, I complained softly, leaning into his solid chest. I'm tired of looking at depreciating assets. Let's go get that Wagyu beef. Actually, no. I'm feeling environmentally conscious tonight. Let's go get premium vegetarian sushi. We need to respect the crustacean community. The terrifying, tyrannical storm brewing in Harrison's eyes instantly vanished, replaced by an intoxicating, profound warmth. The dark gold halo wrapped around me, shielding me from the flashing cameras and the chaos of the room. Vegetarian sushi it is. My little market crash, Harrison murmured a low, devastatingly attractive smile playing on his lips. He didn't even spare a single glance for the broken man crying on the floor. He simply turned, his arm firmly around my waist, and escorted me out of the grand ballroom. Behind us, the heavy, thudding footsteps of the Waldorf Astoria security team finally arrived, dragging Chadwick away from the podium by his armpits like a sack of spoiled produce. The air outside the hotel was cool and fresh. The aggressive, suffocating opulence of the ballroom was behind me. I took a deep breath, feeling the absolute, unadulterated freedom of a perfectly executed market correction. So, Harrison said casually, opening the door to the waiting matte black Maybach. Should I have my acquisitions team begin drafting the hostile takeover paperwork for his remaining assets? I sank into the plush leather seats, yawning extensively. Yeah, sure. Buy it out at a 90% discount. The building has good plumbing. I think Tyson needs a bigger summer home. The complete dissolution of Chadwick's tech empire took exactly 48 hours. By Wednesday morning, the Securities and Exchange Commission had frozen his remaining assets based on a conveniently anonymous, highly detailed tip outlining massive corporate fraud. By Thursday evening, my acquisition algorithms had successfully purchased his heavily liquidated shares at exactly 2.5 cents on the dollar. I was currently lounging in the center of Harrison's expansive mahogany desk, wearing one of his oversized, obscenely expensive white dress shirts. My massive silver tail cascaded off the edge, the translucent fins occasionally flicking against the drawer handles. Before me was a towering, terrifying stack of legal acquisition documents. Sign here, an initial on page 42, Harrison murmured, his voice a low, magnetic rumble right beside my ear. He was standing close, too close, his dark gold aura enveloping me entirely. He handed me a solid gold Montblanc fountain pen. I stared at the thick, incomprehensible blocks of legalese for exactly 3 seconds. The sheer density of the vocabulary gave me an instant phantom migraine. No, I declared flatly, dropping the pen onto the desk with a sharp clack. I gathered the entire stack of documents and shoved them firmly into Harrison's solid chest. Finnick, Harrison raised an eyebrow, easily catching the heavy files. You just executed the most ruthless, brilliant hostile takeover of the quarter. You are now the majority shareholder. You have to sign. I am a marine organism, Harrison. I don't read Times New Roman. I complained, dramatically leaning back until my head bumped against his abdomen. Look at me. I am a delicate, highly sensitive creature of the deep. Too much data processing causes my scales to lose their luster. You sign it. You run the company. Turn it into a subsidiary that manufactures eco-friendly crab feed or something. I don't care. Harrison stared down at me. The absolute, tyrannical apex predator of Wall Street, a man who regularly made seasoned executives cry in boardrooms, was currently being ordered to act as an administrative assistant by a guy wearing no pants. Slowly, the dangerous, dark gold tension in his eyes melted into a profound, helpless warmth. He let out a low chuckle, his chest vibrating pleasantly against the back of my head. You, he murmured, leaning down to press a hot, lingering kiss to my silver hair, are the most aggressively lazy, tyrannical freeloader I have ever met. I prefer the term efficiently delegated visionary. I corrected him lazily, closing my eyes and enjoying the heat radiating from him. Now, did the contractors finish my new room? Harrison's smile widened into something devastatingly handsome and slightly wicked. Yes. They finished this morning, shall we? He didn't wait for my answer. He effortlessly scooped me up into his arms, files and all, and carried me out of the study. The new room wasn't a room. It was an entire architectural marvel. Harrison had bought out the penthouse directly above his and spent tens of millions of dollars completely gutting it. He had removed the floor, connecting the two levels, and constructed a massive 3-story, open-air infinity aquarium right in the center of the living space. It was a breathtaking masterpiece of marine engineering. The walls were made of ultra-clear, pressure-resistant acrylic. The bottom was a meticulously recreated, vibrant coral reef, complete with a gentle, artificial deep-sea current. The lighting shifted dynamically, perfectly mimicking the spectral phases of the moon and the sun. Oh, I breathed, my silver eyes widening as I looked at the vast, shimmering expanse of deep, clear water. But that wasn't even the best part. To the side of the main tank, connected by an intricate series of glass tunnels, was a smaller, heavily reinforced VIP biosphere. Inside this VIP tank, sitting aggressively on a tiny, custom-built, underwater throne made of Legos, was Tyson the mantis shrimp. Below him, patrolling the sandy floor like heavily armored tanks, was the entire crustacean legion, Barnaby the king crab, and a dozen highly decorated American lobsters. I had my security team sign non-disclosure agreements regarding the lobsters, Harrison explained dryly, setting me down on the edge of the massive main tank. They are now officially classified as tactical marine assets. I didn't say a word. I simply shifted, letting my silver tail slide smoothly into the water. The temperature was perfect, exactly simulating the cool, tranquil embrace of the deep ocean. I dove in. The sensation was absolute heaven. I swam down, the bioluminescence of my scales illuminating the coral reef, before shooting back up to the surface with a powerful thrust of my tail. I broke the surface, water cascading down my face, and rested my arms on the edge of the glass, looking down at Harrison. He was standing there, his bespoke suit immaculate, completely dry, yet his eyes were entirely submerged in me. His dark gold aura was heavy, intoxicating, and filled with a terrifying, permanent devotion. The man who owned half the city looked at me as if I was the only asset that actually mattered. You know, I said, a slow, teasing smile playing on my lips. For a ruthless capitalist, you're surprisingly good at interior design. Harrison stepped closer to the glass. He reached out his warm, dry fingers gently tracing the wet, silver line of my jaw. I told you, he murmured, his voice a low, absolute decree. I would buy you a glacier if you asked for it. A few million gallons of water is the absolute minimum you deserve. I leaned into his touch, my snarky mouth completely failing me for once. The suffocating, decaying fog of the past 3 years was entirely gone. In its place was the clear, indestructible ice blue halo of my own independence, perfectly fused with the warm, protective amber of the man who had let me turn his life into a chaotic, aquatic disaster. Hey Harrison, I whispered, the sound echoing softly over the surface of the water. Yes, my little market crash. I think I'm going to stay a freeloader for the rest of my life. So you better keep working hard. Tyson needs a new Lego castle next week. Harrison threw his head back and laughed a rich, genuine sound that completely shattered the quiet of the penthouse. He leaned over the glass, entirely disregarding the splash zone, and pulled me up for a scorching, undeniable kiss. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the aggressive lights of New York City glittered like a million cold, hard diamonds. But inside this penthouse, surrounded by my thermodynamic crabs and a billionaire who was thoroughly, hopelessly obsessed with me, the world was perfectly, flawlessly warm.